So, how long does it take a guy to realize that he's interested in you? The reason why I felt like it was really important to make this video is because there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to that. One thing that I wanted to address is that huge misconception. For some reason, more people than I thought believe that men just kind of know right away, right? Men just know right away when they meet you that they want to, I don't know, marry you, that they want to, build a relationship with you or whatever. And I want to just like start by saying right away that's not true at all. Do you know what I mean? Like it's only sounds good and sounds really cute in retrospect. Right? For every divorce, for every breakup, right? At some point, right? Chances are that at some point, these people felt like they knew. You know what I mean? At some point, if they decided to build a relationship together, if they decided to buy a house together, if they decided to start a family together, at some point you were in love with that person. At some point you really liked that person. At some point you felt like you wanted to spend, you know what I mean, the rest of your life with that person. At some point you felt like that was the one, right? At some point you would say, right, if asked at the right time, everyone, whether that ended up in a breakup or a divorce or whatever, at some point, if you ask them at the right time, they would tell you, oh, I always knew. Do you know what I mean? Like it's very rare that we like start by hating the other person. Although that happens too, when we're like, oh, I can't stand them at the beginning, and then they grow on you, and you're like, oh, But so many situations, the majority is that you meet them and you're obviously attracted to them to some extent, and you wish that would be the outcome. You want that outcome, so you feel like you always knew. But that's not a real thing. Do you know what I mean? That's not a real thing. We don't just know and that we end up with that person. Sometimes we're attracted to them and we want that thing to happen, but that doesn't mean that we always knew. So the whole notion that men for some reason have this magical power to know right away that this is the right girl or this is the right woman for them is nonsensical. That does not happen, and that's not true for men. That's not true for women either. Right. And I also want to address the other misconception is, I often hear, and this is something that you might have even heard before. There's something you might have said before, and tell me in the comments if that's something that you've said before. But things like, if men really wanted to, if a guy was really interested in you, then he would do, X, Y, and Z. Right. Which is another thing that I hear so many times from people in the comment section of my videos, as well as from new clients of mine, right? But don't you agree, Lion, that if he was really interested, he would just do this and that, he would just say this and that, he would just, no, you know what I mean? Because there's so many different levels, right? I don't want you to mistaken interested versus interested versus interested versus interested. There are so many different. We use the same exact word, but these things could mean completely different things through the process of dating, through like building a relationship with you and all of that. And I kind of want to address the differences, of what interested might mean, right? It takes a man, just like it takes most women, right? A split second, a couple of seconds at most, to decide if they are physically attracted to you to a certain extent, right? So you see someone on the street, you see someone on the first date, you might see someone on a picture, you know what I mean? And within a couple of seconds, if at that, you already made up your mind. And the reason why I say to a certain extent is because even attraction is not something static, right? Even attraction is something that either grows or diminishes over time as we get to know a person, right? Like how many times have you been in a situation where you met someone and they were like, oh my God, they're so attractive, they're so good looking, they're so hot, right? But then you got to know them a little bit more, or you started a conversation with them, and then you maybe like a day or two later, or a week or two later, or even a month, you ask yourself the question, like, I don't even know what I saw in them. Like you literally just don't find them physically as attractive as they used to because of all of these other things about them, right? Their personality, their sense of humor, or the lack of sense of humor, like, their values, their beliefs, so like how they talk, how they walk, all of these things, right? Their person, right? Even physically. How many times does the other, the opposite of that happen, right? It happened to me so many times when you meet someone and they're like, yeah, they're okay. I mean, they're not bad looking, but they're not really my type. But then you get to know them a little bit, and then they make you laugh all night, and then you feel like you have so many things in common, and then like you know what I mean? Like the conversation is just like super interesting with them, and then they tell you that they want a lot of the same things that you want, and they seem to have some sort of like a way to really listen to you and hear you and understand you as a person. And then even physically, they go from like a 7 to like a 9 or a 10, where you're like, oh my God, like this person is like literally the most, I don't know why I didn't see it in the first place. It happened to me more than once, one way or the other. Right. So I even want to say that the attraction is not static, but we can, for the most part, as soon as we see someone on the street, we see them, a picture of them, a video of them or whatever, we can tell whether or not, like, to a certain extent, we are attracted to them. We're interested in them. Right. At this point, when I say a man is interested, what he's interested in is not you, is not necessarily a relationship with you, right? So don't get that twisted if he was really interested. At this point, what he might be really interested in doing is just going on a date with you, is starting and beginning the process of getting to know you. That's what they're interested in. That's that interested. A man cannot be interested in a relationship with you or anything else more serious than that if it's the first date, if it's the second date, if it's the third date, if it's the fourth date. They can't do that. They can't know that. They can't be interested in that because they don't know you, right? And that applies both ways. You should not be really interested in a man, right, in the sense that you want to build a relationship with him or whatever, unless you also take the time to get to know one another. And it takes a couple of months, right, to begin really getting to know a person, to wait for the point where the mask comes off and you become a little bit more real around each other, where you stop just saying and doing things based on what you think the other person wants to hear and see, but actually become a little bit more of yourself. It takes a little bit of time for that to happen, to human beings to be that way, right? That applies to both men and women. So you can't really know that you're interested in that sense in a relationship unless you've been dating each other and seeing each other in person on a regular weekly basis over a period of at least a couple of months, right? Until then, the interest that you're talking about is just interested in getting to know you, right? Because one of the questions that I get asked really often is, well, why was he, asking me out on dates? Why was he calling me? Why was he texting me? He was obviously interested, and then he stopped. I'm like, well, what surprises you about this scenario? Right? This is maybe difficult for some people to hear, but it shouldn't surprise you. That's the process. That's literally what that whole dating process should look like, to be honest with you. Right? Someone is seeing you on a dating app. Someone sees you in person on the first date, and they're like, okay, well, yeah, I'm fairly interested in getting to know that person because, to a certain extent, they're attracted to you physically. And then you start a dating process, and they start getting to know you. Right, and they're having conversations with you, and they start looking at the compatibility factor, assessing compatibility, and all of these things. And again, at this point, it could go either way, right? It could go to a point where like feel more and more and more ready and interested to build a relationship with you, or less. Right? It doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with you or you need to fix something, because dating and relationships really are all about compatibility. What's amazing. The exact same things that are going to make me great for someone are the exact same things that might make me terrible for someone else. I'm not trying to fix that. I'm trying to find someone who I have that compatibility factor, right? So again, why was he doing all of these things and then all of a sudden he wasn't interested anymore? It's not, most of the time, it's not because they're trying to hurt your feelings or they have like these malicious intents or they're trying to play games with you or confuse you. It's because that's what the process looks like. They were interested. They were interested to get to know you. And as they were getting to know you, they found that, that's not it. And they might have, throughout that process, also have dated someone else, right? I always encourage, hey, date multiple people at the same time, right? Conversations about exclusivity and all of these things shouldn't even come to mind unless you've been dating for someone for a little while, right? And getting to know one another and wanting to build a relationship with someone specifically. So the dating process is really there to like assess these potential options. So they were dating you, they got to know you, and they're like, you know what, that's not it. Or there was someone else that was like closer to that it than you are. And that's, again, completely okay. You're not trying to be, right, everybody's cup of tea. You're just trying to find your own. So there should be any surprise there that, someone who was putting a lot of effort seemingly because they were interested in getting to know you, then stop because like, well, that's not it. And they move on to the next person, right? And that should really apply on both sides. You should be out there not just hoping and waiting for to be chosen by a dude. You should be out there choosing, doing the same thing he does, making sure that you're assessing that compatibility and you have boundaries along the way that will make it easier for you to maintain that analytical capacity when you're dating someone, right? Really taking the time to think about whether or not this is something that you want to or see a potential relationship with, rather than just like diving in head first with no boundaries and then becoming emotionally dependent, emotionally connected, emotionally bonded to that person and a specific eventuality, a relationship with that person. So that's kind of like the entire process. So do men know right away? No. Do they know that they probably want to sleep with you within the first couple of seconds that they meet you? Maybe, right? Just like you probably do as well. But if they deciding whether or not they're interested in a relationship with you, anything more serious than just potentially going on a date with you or sleeping with you, absolutely not. Right? So don't take that for a given. Just because someone who is seemingly, right, putting in some effort, yes, they're interested. They're interested in this, but they're not interested in that just yet. So make sure that your boundaries reflect the fact that they're not yet interested in a relationship with you. They can't be interested in a relationship with you unless they got to know you. And in order to get to know you, it takes more than just one dinner or even 2 or 3, even 5 dinners. It takes a little bit of time. It takes a couple of months to really get to know you and decide that they want a relationship with you. I want to also say another thing, right? While it takes a couple of seconds to decide that someone wants to sleep with you, it takes a couple of months to decide whether or not they want a relationship with you. So make sure that should give you a clear distinction of what they might be interested in at this point. How long have you been dating? How often have you been seeing each other throughout that dating process? Not just how long since you guys first connected on the dating app, but have you been frequently, regularly, right, at least on a weekly basis, doing activities together, seeing each other in person, going on dates, right? Actual dates, not just like, hey, come on over, watch Netflix and chill, but actual dates. That should tell you so much about their level of interest with you, right? A lot more than what they're saying, but what they're doing, right? Are they at least wanting to spend time with you on a regular basis? That's one of the biggest indicators that someone is really interested in that sense. So to conclude this video, men, just like women, don't have a superpower that tells them that this is the right person. They just might be interested, although it sounds really nice in retrospect to say like, oh, yeah, I always knew that this was the one for me. I always knew. It sounds nice, right? But it's not the reality. We almost feel like it is, right? Because again, if we ended up with that person, then we can say these things. But obviously, if we haven't ended up with that person, then we're not going to be saying these things, right? So, but we might be feeling the exact same way, right? On day one, we might feel the exact same way with the person we marry, rather with the person that we're never going to see again, right? So don't base yourself off of that. We don't know right away. We do know whether or not we're attracted to you, and even that could go up or down as we're getting to know you, right? And it takes months to really figure out whether or not we want a relationship with you. So your boundaries should really reflect that along the way. And if you have no idea what that means, and I'm saying these things, there are plenty of resources that you can find. The link in my bio. I'm going to put it in the description, and you can check out some of my coaching programs, some of my courses that will give you a really good idea of what these boundaries should be at any stage of the dating process. During the talking stage, where you're just texting each other off of the dating app, during the dating stage, and moving into the relationship stage, right? And these boundaries obviously change; they're not static, right? And it's really important to know what these boundaries should be, as well as how to communicate these boundaries, right? Understanding the difference between internal and external boundaries as well is extremely important. So again, if you're struggling with that, if you have no idea what I just said at the end of this video about boundaries, it's probably, I could almost bet like 95% of this is probably the biggest reason why you're not where you want to be in your love life, in your dating life, is because this is the really the cornerstone of building healthy relationships, is developing these very clear boundaries, first of all, for yourself and for other people, and knowing how to properly communicate these boundaries in order to encourage and grow that attraction, right? Instead of killing it too quickly. Hopefully this video was helpful. Let me know in the comments, what did you feel about it? How did you feel about it? And if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to potentially address that in a future video. Until then, I'll see you guys.